Good evening, Erev Tov. We actually had last week Kitisa, and we spoke about Purim because it was Purim HaMeshulash. And now we're heading 2 weeks of Vayakhel and Pkudei that we had in a way by Truma and Tetzaveh. There are very similar parashot, Truma and Vayakhel and Tetzaveh and Pkudei. But I'll ask your pardon to use this parasha for Chet HaEgel, for the sin of the calf, of the golden calf, instead of last week, and we'll discuss it because it's a major issue. And next week, Bezrat Hashem, we'll dedicate to the Mishkan, as we did last year. Okay. So let's start with Chet HaEgel. Chet HaEgel, the basic question. Moshe Rabbeinu leaves, ascends to the skies, and then Am Yisrael sinned immediately, and ויאמרו קום עשה לנו אלוהים כי זה משה האיש לא ידענו מהיה לו. And as I said on Shabbat, Rashi jumps immediately, קופץ על המציאה, as we say in Hebrew, and understands the very pasuk that says Ele Elohecha Israel, okay, and understands that by saying Elohecha and not Eloheinu, meaning that the golden calf workers were not one of them, okay, didn't belong to the worshippers. That's why, based on the Psikta de Rav Kahana, Rashi says that they were Orev Rav, and he easily finds that it's not an Am Israel, it's just as foreigners, okay, and it's like the Kuzari from another side. The Kuzari makes his zchut and tells zchut about Am Israel. He says it wasn't the majority of Am Israel, not even the minority, just 3,000 people, a very, like not like 5% of the population of the men, okay? But Rashi says basically the same. He says that the Erev Rav that went from Mitzrayim, they were the basis for everything bad being done in the future. Okay, so I started speaking about it on Shabbat, but I didn't finish in my drasha. I think based on just now we'll make the kesher to last week Haftarah of Shmuel Aleph Perek Tetvav. You remember that when Shmuel meets Shaul, so Shaul he doesn't admit what he had done before, and he says Hakimoti Dvar Hashem, and then he asks for his Bot Tishtachavei Imi למען זבוח, לא, he says, אשר חמל העם על מיטב הצאן והבקר, עם ישראל took pity on the best of the cattle, of the cows and the oxes, למען זבוח להשם אלוקיך. Okay? What does it mean, השם אלוקיך? Had he been in the Agada, he would say that he's Chas v'Shalom the Ben Arasha. He says, to your God, not, he doesn't include himself in, so he made a lot of sins by denying his responsibility, etc. So why does he get into the problem of saying Hashem Elokecha? So I think that saying Hashem Elokeinu gives you some subjectiveness, that you include yourself, you talk about your religious belief. But by saying Hashem Elokecha, you put yourself not in a subjective place, but in a third form place, as if you talk about another God from the outside. So when you talk about philosophy, about way of belief, you talk about Hashem Elokecha, okay? And that's the reason, I think, why that's my pshat, no, not Rashi's. Rashi says that the Egel workers said El Elohecha Israel, because they were outsiders. But I think that even if they were Jews, they would say Ene Elokecha, because they don't talk about their own beliefs, their own religion. They talk objectively, okay, as if they stand from afar, looking at God and saying that's a God. And by saying that, I think that you cannot, differentiate between. Because a lot of people said that they did believe in God. They just try to make something else as a medium or Moshe. But by saying that, I do think that they really gambled or talked about the real God. Okay, so they were mamash sinning with the real God. They had a substitute to the God that took them out of Mitzrayim. And therefore, the problem is much major because you don't understand how people that just stood under the chuppah of Mamad Har Sinai 40 days ago, how can they neglect everything they were seeing? All the 10 Makot, all the 10 commandments, all the Ma'amad of Kriyat Yamsuf and the Ma'amad of Har Sinai, neglect everything, forget everything, and just deal with the golden calf. Okay? So how can you rebelieve after such a small period? How does a person change his mind by a second? How does it work? So
Well, also, it doesn't really make sense, quite honestly, because they come from Har Sinai with what's this called, the Edyecha. They're wearing they're the badges of Hashem on them, like Malachim are with them.
yeah,
What's going on? The Malachim are there with them, one on the left side, one on the right side, as we hear in the Midrash, whatever. And then later they're going to take them away. So what use were they?
true, true, true. I would like to answer you that they left them immediately after Mamad Har Sinai, but as you continued, that's not true because Chazal said that just now Hakadosh Baruch Hu uprooted the angels out of them. So yeah. It's a big question. Okay, it's a big question. We talked about it on Shabbat with the famous Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim that differentiates between two uh, terms or two marachot, two series of terms that Adam before the sin, before Achilat Etz Hadat, he had uh, true and false, emet v'sheker, and later by eating from the Etz Hadat, he switched the system into a system of tov v'ra, of subjective truth. Okay, and so we don't talk now about this Rambam, famous Rambam at the beginning of Moreh Nevuchim, but the question is always, once you talk about two systems, how do you have the basic koach, basic power to sin? Okay? Because once you ate from Etz Hadat, I do understand that now the sin is inside you and you're in different system. But how, by looking at the tree or by listening to the snake, whatever, how can you switch from one place to another? Okay? So that's the same question here. Once they are surrounded by angels and not surrounded, the angels stand on their shoulders, as you said. So it's very difficult to understand how they could sin at all. Okay, so the question is from a lot of angels. Okay, the angel of the chokhmah, the real revelation, Galut, that they did see in our Mount of Sinai, and later on with the angels, and there's a stupidity of what they've done. So let's go through Ma'amarei Chazal and try to understand them. If you say like Rashi, it's much easier because then you say that it's a Erev Rav. it's not clear what the Erev Rav did see on Mount Sinai, so you can talk about the foreigners, that they were in a lower Madrega and they sinned, etc., whatever. So, according to Chazal in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Peitet, Chazal in Shabbat Peichet Peitet, they discuss the whole process of Ma'amad Har Sinai, and Chazal said that it was just Maaseh Satan, satanic deed, and Chazal said, Bas Satan ve'irbev et ha'olam. So the Satan comes and mixes up the world. הראה דמות חושך ואפלה, דמות ענן וערפל, so he showed them darkness, he showed them fog, הראה להם דמות מיתתו של משה. So as Rashi brings, as we all know, he shows them the bed of Moshe. And according to, so it's very clear that the Satan misled them, okay? But what does Chazal want to point out? That going out of Egypt, they were very dependent on the figure of Moshe Rabbeinu. כי זה משה האיש, okay? לא ידענו מה היה לו, it's very clear from the pasuk itself, that the dependence on Moshe was the cause to their sin. Okay. So Chazal said in another place, I talked about Shabbat Peitet, now I'm talking about Brachot Lamed Bet, famous Gemara, ודי זהב, כן, at the beginning of ספר דברים, אלה הדברים אשר דיבר משה אל כל ישראל, ולבן וחצרות ודי זהב. So the Gemara understands that it's not a name of a place, it's a code for things that Moshe Rabbeinu talks to Hashem about, and di zahav, they don't understand di like di, but like day, like enough. Okay, so di zahav, Chazal understand like day zahav. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Hashem with a taina, אמרי דבר רבני ינאי, כך אמר משה רבנו לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא, ריבונו של עולם, בשביל כסף וזהב, you have given them enough money, what do you want them not to see? Not to sin, okay? And as Gemara says, it's like a king that gave his sons, a prince, he gave him, he put him at the entrance to בית של זונות. מה יעשה הבן שלא יחטא? Okay, what do you want from me? You put me there, what do you expect me to do? Okay, so the same thing happens here. Chazal gives a lot of זכויות to Am Israel by blaming HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the guilt. Okay, you have given them. Listen to this, the following amazing midrash appearing in Shmot Rabbah, מ"ג, פרשה ח'. למה יחרה אפך בעמך? ויכל משה את פני השם אלוקיו, ויאמר, למה השם יחרה אפך בעמך? אשר הוצאת מארץ מצרים בכוח גדול וביד חזקה. So Moshe Rabbeinu לכאורה mentions with no reason זה יציאת מצרים. הקדוש ברוך הוא knows what he had done before, okay, that he has taken them out of Egypt. So לכאורה the pshat is why you shouldn't have taken them out of Egypt. It's just superfluous if you kill them, if you destroy the nation. Okay, that's a pshat. The Midrash says an amazing thing about this mentioning. אמר משה רבנו לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא, מהיכן הוצאתם? Where have you taken them from? Not out of Egypt? דע, מהיכן הוצאת אותם? So Moshe blames the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What do you want them? They were of the Avodah Zarah in Egypt. They saw the Egyptians worshipping the sea, as we know from Asiri ben Nisan, etc. And okay, it didn't. Now you don't ask me about the quickness in which Am Israel sinned. You ask me about the being naive to imagine that getting out of Egypt so quickly would fade away all the ideas of the Avodah Zarah. So Moshe Rabbeinu blames the Kadosh Baruch Hu. If you had taken them out of, let's say, I don't know, out of out of Lebanon. Okay, so in Lebanon we don't have Avodah Zarah, but you have taken them out of the kingdom of Avodah Zarah in the world of worshiping the say. So why do you expect them so easily to forget everything they learned from the Egyptians and go back to worship you? So Moshe blames HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay? But Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, it's even clearer, because the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer says that going to worship the Egel, they came with sheep on their hands, okay? So they mamash imitated what they had seen before with the Egyptians, okay? So all these midrashim, it's much more extreme than what we saw in Brachot Daf Lamed Bet, that the Moshe Rabbeinu blames Kesef and Zahav. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu blames the Kadosh Baruch Hu in each and every deed that he is done. Okay, in taking them out of Egypt, in giving them the money, and it's mamash, we can track all the good things that the Kadosh Baruch Hu did to us, took us out of Mitzrayim, gave us the money of Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu blames the Kadosh Baruch Hu as the source for Chet HaEgel. Okay, but all of this is very nice in saying why they sinned, but it doesn't give them any limud zchut. Okay, but so you just can understand that they looked at other people, the Egyptians, and they imitated them, and they had a reason to be good students, but you don't have a real zchut why you should say why you should they have done the again. And the same Midrash Rabbah, Shmot Rabbah Mem Dalet, Parasha Aleph, Rabbi Tanchuma learns, בשעה שעשו אותו מעשה, עמד משה רבינו ולימד זכות על עם ישראל 40 days, 40 יום, ולא נענה. Once he mentions the deads, כיוון שהזכיר את המתים, מיד נענה. Once he says, זכור לאברהם, ליצחק ולישראל אבותיך, then he is being answered. Meaning to say that according to the Midrash, with all the envelope of blaming HaKadosh Baruch Hu for this and taking them out of Mitzrayim and giving them the money, etc., it doesn't help. Okay, it can at the most say that they have a reason why they sinned, but it's not a real good thing for a good explanation, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu tries and tries and tries his best. 40 days, it doesn't help. Once he mentions the forefathers Avot, then it helps. Rashi brings another extreme. It's very interesting because if you look at Rashi, and that's his way, he brings sometimes from here, sometimes from there. There is no consistency in his shita, meaning to say that Rashi brings like 5 reasons for the ta'anot, the claims of Moshe. Nothing contradicts each other. Okay, Rashi brings a midrash of Di Zahav, and Rashi brings the following midrash that I would mention. Lama Hashem yechere apcha be'amecha? Why are you angry at your nation? Klum eino mitkarne el hachacham be'chacham, gibor be'gibor. So Moshe Rabbeinu talks about the stupidity. He talks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why are you jealous? At what? What did they do? Do you really appreciate what they have done? Are you afraid of the golden calf? No. You know that it's silly. Okay? Klum eino mitkane el hachacham bechacham o gibor begibor. If you are Goliath, for instance, and you have they go after David. Okay, so or Ika Shaul ba'alafav and David b'rivotav. So you have one hero and they have another hero. So now you're jealous because they have preferred somebody to you. But here, why do you care? The Eged is nothing. Amar asu lecha siyua ata koes alehem. So Moshe Rabbeinu says something amazing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says they help you. They brought you an auxiliary person. They brought you siyua. אתה מזריח את החמה from now on, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be the responsible, the man in charge for the sun, והוא את הלבנה, the egel would be in charge for the moon. אתה מזריח את הכוכבים, והוא מזריח את המזלות. So what do you want? You have somebody to help you. אתה מוריד את הטל, והוא משיב רוחות. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, משה אף אתה טועה כמותם, והלא אין בו ממש. So it's an amazing discussion between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe. Moshe tries to make the jealousy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he says, tell me, what's wrong? What's wrong? You do one, they do other. The Egel does other. So what do you want? What do you want? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no. Listen to what you're saying. You do believe that the Egel is an auxiliary personality? It doesn't help me at all. It's nothing. So Moshe says, wow. So you said that. והלא אין בו ממש. אמר לו, אם כן, למה אתה כועס על בניך? So they have done stupid characters. They have done stupid person. Why are you angry at them? It's an amazing discussion. Moshe traps HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his own word. At the beginning, he tries to make the jealousy, to understand, to really understand what he's angry about. Once HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're silly because you do believe in the existence of the Egel, it's nothing. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, you have said yourself that it's nothing. Okay, it's nothing. So what do you want from them? So the ending point is the stupidity of what they have done. So according to this amazing midrash, the Dagesh, Moshe stresses out how they are kids, how they are silly ducks, okay? How they make stupid things that you, as a lot of times, kids make problems and you say, okay, they're just silly. Don't pay attention to them. They don't understand what they're doing. Okay. But according to Chazal, it's a very interesting that according to the Midrashim talk about the silliness or being silly, but Chazal, on the contrary, try to understand the Egel mamash as a heavy issue, שיש בו ממש, and therefore they try to say different things. Let's go to the Sefer HaKuzari. The Sefer HaKuzari of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. He has a discussion with Melech Kuzar. He makes an interview with him and he asks him about the Egel and the sin. So he asked him, how is it possible that Am Israel sinned, etc. And then the Kuzari answers. At the beginning he says, as I mentioned in the beginning, Kehilat Shiur, that it wasn't 600,000 people, it was just 3,000, okay, 5% of the population, and therefore take it into proportion, because it was just 5%. Okay. And then the Kuzari says that באמת, there is no difference between the Kruvim with the characters of the angels, whatever, the psalim, to the oxes, okay? To the ox at Am Yisrael, the golden calf. What's the difference? The only difference between the golden calf and the Kruvim is that the golden calf was not being ordered by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Kruvim were ordered. But looking at them, you might think that it's the same thing. And we know from Chazal that Chazal said that once they opened the Kodesh HaKodashim on Yom Kippur, and they saw the Kruvim, so they mamash were, Chazal talk about the Gilui Arayot, כאילו the Goyim were mekanterim otam, the Goyim were making fun of them and said, that's what you have in Kodesh HaKodashim? Chas v'shalom, pornography, כן? You have a zivug of a man and woman, but on the other hand, you might look at that not as a Gilui Arayot, but as a Avodah Zarah. the of the Avodah Zarah looked at the Kruvim, and once Am Yisrael took the curtain away and they saw the Kruvim, so the of the Avodah Zarah didn't understand, why do you want anything from our Psilim? You have Pesel on top of the Aron. Okay, the only difference is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked you to have this Pesel, whereas HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't ask you to have the Kruv. Okay, so and then the Kuzari understands that the whole system of the Kruvim are like mamash as we saw in the Midrash, but on the opposite, are like something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu expresses himself by. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in heaven, and he wants to be mitgale in olam hazeh, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitgale by something which is close to us, which is tangible, something that we can feel, we can see, we can appreciate, and to think that just HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes miracles or manhig et haolam, it's very nice, but it's a philosophical idea very difficult to fulfill. By saying that you have some degrees, so that's why you can understand. We know that the Rambam in Chot Avodah Zarah says the basic same thing. He understands that HaKadosh Baruch Hu started. Nobody in the world believed that the Psilim were of the Avodah Zarah were bringing any shefa, any influence, but he says that they started of the Avodah Zarah by understanding that by worshipping the suns, the moons, the stars, you help HaKadosh Baruch Hu because there are his servants. Okay, so mamash on the contrary, you see how Chazal meaning the Rishonim, not the Midrash Rabbah, not the Gemara, the Rishonim go from one side of the equation, whereas all the Midrashim talked about how Moshe tries to convince HaKadosh Baruch Hu about the stupidity, because they have no reason why to do that. And it's mamesh, they're just kids. And instead of trying to understand the transition from seeing a Kadosh Baruch Hu to another God, how did they do it so quickly? The Midrashim easily understand that there is no transition. Even the most intelligent boy, if he's immature, he plays with games, he plays with stupid things, and sometimes davka, biglal, that he is so intelligent and he needs some basic plays and games. And since he's so intelligent, he wants to make shtuyot, he wants to make, to be neitchatzef, to do things against the system, to do stupid things in order, we call it leorid metach, okay? He's in a very high level. He wants to go to land, to descend to earth, and therefore he makes stupid things. So Chazal tried to understand the sin just from his stupid way of doing it. And that's why Moshe tries to convince HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He doesn't even succeed, because sometimes he just mentions the Avot, according to one Midrash, but according to the other, he talks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says it was just stupid. But in the Rishonim, we don't see this tendency to understand that Chet HaEgel was stupid. We see, on the contrary, that they really believe in as Egel as something that helps HaKadosh Baruch Hu, auxiliary, or something that go between, or dargat beinayim, whatever you call it. And either the Rambam or the Kuzari, the big two of the five big mefarshim of medieval, big philosophers of the medieval, among the rest, okay, the rest are Rasag, Emunot Vedeot. I don't think that he relates to the Chet HaEgel. And we have Chovat HaLevavot, Rabbeinu Bechaya, Ibn Pkoda, and we have later, we have Sefer HaIkrim, Rabbi Yosef Albo. So the big two, which is the Kuzari and the Rambam, they relate similarly to the same Chet HaEgel as understanding the Chet just by his covered and his centrality of in Avodat Hashem, and they understand that what Am Yisrael wanted was not to jump, not to try to make them an intermediate in order to communicate with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why they sinned. So we see at least two systems of terutzim, of explanations how to understand the Chet HaEgel. One is older, the system of the Midrash, by trying to make it into a shtut, and one into make it a basic yearning of the human being in order to gain a Kadosh Baruch Hu, in order to try to worship him really, and therefore he needs some stairs, not to jump, and that's why they created the Egel. That is for now, and Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll go back to the Mishkan וכליו. שבוע טוב, בשורות טובות. תודה רבה.
ערב טוב, תודה.
ערב טוב.
תודה.
תודה, תודה.